All right, welcome everyone to the School Marketing Show Live. Today we are on episode 6 about admissions ad mistakes. So if you are planning on running ads for the fall, stop what you're doing right now and get together with us right now. We'll talk about different mistakes that you can make that you can get better at this fall, anything that you can update. Just to give you a quick background on the show, here at Final Site, professional development and education are really at the core of our culture. So this show is just a way for us to get schools and districts around the world in the know about best practices and strategies for marketing, communications, admissions, advancement, you name it, we cover it. Each episode, we go through the who, what, when, where, why, and most importantly, how for each of these strategies. Now, we do it in this live format so we can hear from you. So please feel free to use the comment section to let us know what you're interested in learning about so we can let it influence our next episode. So last episode, we talked about how to approach your events for the fall. It's an important topic to consider when planning your admission strategy, which really brings us to our topic today. So even without a pandemic on our hands, the way your school approaches its advertising efforts should be evaluated on a regular basis, which is something that I don't think many schools realize. Sometimes it feels like a set it and forget it thing. So we're looking forward to talking through some of these mistakes today. So like I said, if you're planning on running ads for the fall, stop what you're doing, and I'll let Mia kick it off for why we're talking about this today.
Yeah, so first and foremost, why do we need to think about this year's advertising differently than maybe what we've done over the summer, the spring, or even last fall? And my favorite saying across all marketing strategies is, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always gotten, which is a grammatical nightmare, but it really is how I see any type of marketing campaign, especially one that we're investing a lot of time and resources into. So because this year is so different and because this year looks so different, I encourage every school to just take a step back and say, okay, is there a different target audience that I need to be reaching? Is there a certain keyword that I now want to rank for that I wasn't previously ranking for? Do we need to adjust our budget? Do we need to put more money into paid advertising because inquiries and enrollment are down? There's a lot of reasons that you may be just needing to pivot your social media or your paid advertising campaign at this moment. That aside, there are a couple of statistics that I've always found really remarkable and interesting when it comes to pay-per-click advertising. And the first one, so we all know how important that page one presence is, right? And with more families moving to the suburbs and more public school families thinking about a private school education, and even families who have a kid in private school already, maybe thinking about making a switch if they're not super happy with the current situation. We know that a lot of families are spending a lot of time in Google search right now, right? But landing a spot on page one organically is not easy. I think it's really easy for a head of school to come in and say, like, we need to do SEO, we need to be on page one. And like, it's never that easy. Like, you can't just write a page that says best private school in Baltimore and all of a sudden be on page one. But a pay-per-click ad can allow you to do that. So if you're not running paid ads already, paid ads can increase brand awareness by upwards of 80%. So if you're having trouble getting your name out there, just having paid ads land you on page one can help just get your name out there, especially in really competitive searches. So if you're not running advertising already, or you're maybe not putting a lot of money into it, that might be one reason you want to think about it differently this year, is because you need to improve your brand awareness. Second, I don't want to say pay-per-click advertising gives you a way to trick searchers, but nearly half of people who are in a Google search can't actually tell the difference between a paid ad and an organic search result. So not only does a paid ad land you at the top of page one, but a lot of people who go to page one are kind of just like, oh, look, first result, I'm going to click that. It's human nature. The majority of clicks on page one always go to like the top 3 search results anyways. So keeping those statistics in mind and keeping in mind how much has changed over the course of the year, we definitely just want to take into consideration that now is probably a good time to look back on those campaigns that we set up in January or March. I think, Kristen in particular, we've seen a lot of mistakes happen when schools are not pivoting their paid advertising campaigns. And I know that you've, taken a lot of looks, my goodness.
I've looked at a lot of advertising.
You've looked at a lot of advertising, my goodness. It is a Monday. You've looked at quite a lot of school advertising, and you've noticed that there are some pretty similar trends happening across the board here because schools are not taking the time to evaluate their paid advertising at this time. So let's talk about now what those paid advertising mistakes are, maybe how schools can easily identify and remedy them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think getting past that piece of understanding why advertising is so important, if you have run advertising in the past and you felt that it didn't perform, so in general, ads don't really work for your school, that may not be the case because there are some common mistakes that you can make that really affect one, how much you're spending, and two, how many conversions you actually get. So you want everything properly optimized. So there are 6 main mistakes that we've seen here at Final Say, especially recently, as schools haven't really gotten into the flow of pivoting their advertising yet. So first and foremost, going too broad with your keyword terms. This is a common mistake to make because obviously you want to get your school's name out there for things that you feel are relevant for your families. But getting too broad can mean that you are competing way too much with many other schools who may not even be in your area. So you're kind of competing unnecessarily. So for example, if you are bidding on the exact match keywords, so someone searching exactly something like public or private schools, so something very kind of broad like that, you're only bidding on that exact match keyword term for anyone searching private schools. On average, that term is being searched over 60,000 times per month in the US. That's so many families that may not even be relevant to your school. They may not be in your state. They may not, be looking exactly for what your school's offering. So really bidding on those super broad terms can be a big disadvantage to you in terms of how much you're spending, because the more users who are searching for it and the more schools that are bidding on that term, the more competitive it is, the more expensive it is. And two, you may not even be getting the clicks that you want because someone out in California may be clicking on your ad for your school in Pennsylvania and it may not even make sense for your school. So making sure you're kind of nailing down those keyword terms, I would recommend doing some keyword research, whether it's in Google Ads or if you use a free tool, seeing how many searches per month are for more long-tailed keywords. So maybe private schools in central Pennsylvania, something a little more broad, something that you can actually match with your school. And then, move forward with that and see how you can adjust your bidding strategy with your keywords to update that. Now, number 2, similarly on the topic of keywords, is not using negative keywords. Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, but when you're running advertising, if you just set it and forget it, there are things happening behind the scenes that you may not realize you can do to really update everything. So if you have advertising running for a certain amount of time, I would recommend going into your Google Ads account, seeing what actual searches are coming in for the ads that you're running. So what searches are families using that are actually getting your ad in the search results page, and making sure you're adding any negative keywords that may not make sense for you. So if you see any terms come in that are, maybe if you're a private school and you see someone search public schools near me and your ad popped up, make sure that you're using public schools as a negative keyword so that you can make sure if any irrelevant searches come through that your ad doesn't come up and that you're not wasting your ad dollars there. So looking into negative keywords is a great thing to do. Number 3 is bidding on your name. Now, there are exceptions to this if you are looking for whether it's an awareness campaign or if you have schools near you that have a similar name or maybe competitors. Basically, what I mean by this is actually bidding on your school's name. Now, why this isn't always good for schools is that if someone is searching your name, they already know who you are and they are probably likely going to click that first page result that's organic anyway. So having an ad up on top of your already first result website is just kind of competing with yourself, and you may be paying for clicks from families who already know you. So that's the major pitfall with bidding on your school's name. The exceptions to this are if you search your school's name and you see a competitor school pop up, that's showing that a competitor is bidding on your name so that they show up when someone bids on your name. So if you wanted to compete with that a little bit, you could try a branded campaign. Or if you have a school whose name is similar to yours and you really want to make sure that your school pops up when it needs to, you could do it there. So there are exceptions, but most of the time I would say if you're bidding on your name just to get your name out there, if someone's Googling your name, they already know who you are. So try to, readjust your advertising spend there and see where you can spend most of your dollars. Number 4 is ignoring the extras. So with Google advertising and PPC, you do have some extras in there in terms of site link extensions. So if you wanted to have a couple of extra links to your website along with your ads so that users can explore a little more. There's call out extensions, so you can add little pieces of content in addition to your ad copy. Making sure you're using all that space is super important, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Number 5 is not using targeted landing pages. So making sure that you're not just running ads to your homepage is so important because you want to streamline that experience as much as possible. And number 6 is not adjusting your ads over time, which I'll actually let Mia take back over and talk about why it's so important to think about your ads over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just going back to that idea, is it if we just turn on our ads and keep it as a set it and forget it traffic medium, we're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity to optimize those pages and capitalize on those conversions. So now is a really good time to ask yourself, are we running ads that might have outdated content? So if you are running ads and you haven't taken a look at them in the past like 30 to 60 days, or let's say even the past 6 months, chances are they could be running with some outdated content. So, you also might want to ask, are we running an ad that might be linking to an outdated page? So we've seen a lot of schools running ads for their open houses, but unfortunately those links are going to a page that says, hey, sorry, we're not actually doing open houses, go to this page instead. Then when you get to that page, there's like a whole other experience to register for different virtual events and things like that. And it's kind of like, whoa, this is confusing and not at all what I was expecting. And I think it kind of gives like a sense of false hope for prospective families too, right? Like, oh, can I actually get to an in-person open house? And it's like, oh no, I'm being redirected again. So, and then of course, asking yourself, have your goals changed? Has your budget changed? So quickly do a self-check, do a self-audit. Do we think there might be outdated content on our ads? Do we think there might be outdated content on our pages? Do we have new goals? Do we have a new budget, whether it's bigger or smaller? And should we update them right now? And then when it comes to constantly updating our ads, there is, I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you have time to be checking it on a regular basis, that's fantastic. But I think we all know that many of our schools are working as like one-person shops. And I think they're hoping that ads can be set it and forget it. So our recommendation is, again, do that self-audit right now. Look at the content on your ads, look at the content on your landing pages, look at those conversion rates, see if they're actually performing and getting you those inquiries, those donations, those applications that you need. If they're not, definitely make the time to make those updates right now. And then once you make those updates, I recommend checking back on the stats in about 30 days. Within 30 days, you should have enough traffic to see any glaring errors. Like if your page has an 80% bounce rate, you might be like, whoa, that's super high and I'm losing money to clicks. Another indication could be a page that has very little traffic at all. And that might be an indicator that your paid ads are just simply not performing within the actual ad space. So it could just mean that you're bidding on keywords that aren't working for your school, or there could just be flaws within your entire ad structure, right? So if you're trying to bid on a keyword and nowhere on your landing page does it have that keyword, it's just not going to work. So I think that within that first 30 days, kind of having a checklist, like, okay, is my bounce rate like under 50%? Check. Am I seeing, what I would, and I think this is like a very gray area, like, am I seeing what would be a good amount of website traffic? Do I see a few hundred or a couple hundred visitors to this page? You might also want to check out those conversion rates. Are people making it to your thank you page? Because I think the last thing that we want is to be paying, some of these schools for the words that they want to bid on have like $5 to $10 cost per click on average, right? So can you imagine just investing like $10 per click and looking at it 6 months down the road to be like, oh my gosh, I drove people to a page where they weren't converting and I just wasted thousands of dollars in ad spend just to send them to a page that they left. So that first 30 days, I think, is a really critical time frame for you to evaluate any glaring errors and your mistakes in your campaign and work with your team to fix them. I think, and of course, Final Site has a consulting team, and I don't mean to like kind of derail for a second and like give a sales pitch, but I do think this is like one of the key reasons why working with a team that's not only just a consulting team from an agency, but an agency that's familiar with schools, because they're going to be keeping an eye on all this for you and giving you advice on how to make those adjustments. And I think that working with a team helps you get more, money out of your ad spend. It helps you craft a better strategy. But I think when it comes to updating the ads, that's really where having an extra set of hands, an extra set of eyes, someone with a ton of experience can help, because I think sifting through that data can be really overwhelming. That being said, after that first 30 days, reevaluating the performance of those pages every 60 to 90 days is key. And then of course, also adding dates to your calendar for like when you need to turn an ad off, right? Like once admission season's over and your open houses are over, we don't want those open house ads to continue to run. Or once you've met your goal for number of applicants, we don't want to keep driving people to that page, especially if like the application deadline has passed. So marking some key dates on your personal calendar to go in and turn off those ads, or simply change them or redirect them to a page is key as well. So 30 days, then every 60 to 90. And then of course, just keeping some key dates in mind on the calendar when they should update based on your own timeline and your own events. That being said, I think as we're updating these ads, I think the question always comes into it always comes into mind, who should we be targeting with these ads? Because I think the content of the ad, the content of the pages, the entire strategy that goes into creating these ads all comes down to the who, Kristen.
Yeah, and I think this is a tricky question because with advertising, when you're thinking of PPC, it's not like social media advertising where you can actually choose your audience, you can choose where they're located and what they're interested in. With ads that are running on the Google network, it's a little more tricky, obviously, because you're just really bidding on these keyword terms that you're hoping relevant families are searching and that they end up on your landing page through your ads. But I would say when you're thinking about your advertising content and everything, really think about your goals and think about your entire funnel, and that's how you can drill down who you're reaching. So with advertising, you're most likely looking at top to the middle of the funnel families. So you're not so much looking at those who are already very familiar with your school. They may have already inquired. When you're thinking of advertising, you're really looking at those families that are right now in their researching phase. So they may not even know what they want yet. They may be looking up some more general things like, you know, values of sending my child to a private school, things like that. So from an awareness standpoint, I would say with your advertising, offering content downloads on more general topics that have a decent amount of search volume, if you do a little bit of keyword research, that's what can work well in your advertising efforts a little earlier on in the funnel. I know, for example, St. Anne's Belfield School back, at the beginning of the pandemic, they did a really cool ebook on virtual field trips. So something like that is a decent thing to put some ad dollars behind if you're just looking to build awareness for your school and you're trying to get those more top of the funnel families. So that can work really well if you're trying to get them more into your enrollment strategy moving forward. If you have families who have already visited your website, so they may be aware of your school at this point, but they not yet have inquired or applied, you can consider using retargeting to get some messaging out on the Google Display Network and social media ads to get them a little further down in your funnel. So you don't have to only think about the awareness stage. You definitely can re-hit those families who maybe already are aware who you are. I would just say more on ads that are just strictly about applying, things like that. You probably want to save that more for other methods of communication like your email marketing and other methods a little further down in the funnel. So if you have someone who has already inquired, instead of trying to put your efforts into thinking about that type of family in your PPC ads, I would think about more your email marketing and things like that to be able to get them further down in the funnel. So I would challenge you with that. Really think about your goals, think about where your families are at, and then adjust your ads for those goals. But when you are advertising, I know I touched on this a little bit with retargeting. Mia, where should they be thinking about advertising?
Yeah, so I think Google is the one that comes to mind here. Obviously, Google is the search giant. I know we had a brief conversation before this call where it was like, should I mention Bing? And it's like, it's so insignificant that no, I don't really think spending money or time on a search engine like Bing is really where we want schools investing their precious time and resources. So obviously Google is where you are going to be spending a lot of or the majority or all of your paid advertising budget, at least for pay-per-click. Now, we also have social media available to us, which is another paid advertising realm. We actually covered what makes a good social media ad back in the School Marketing Show episode 2. So if you're running social media ads, the strategy for those ads and some of the common mistakes and best practices do vary slightly from the traditional paid advertising within Google. So definitely make sure if you're running advertising on Google and social media that you go back and you watch episode 2 of the School Marketing Show to get some of the best practices for there as well. Now, in addition to just traditional Google search and social media, we also have those retargeting ads, which Kristen was mentioning. Now, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, I had read the statistic that you are more likely to be attacked by a shark than to actually click on a retargeting ad, right? So I think when I saw that stat, it immediately made me be like, oh, well, why would we ever waste our money on retargeting ads? It seems like such a waste. But what retargeting ads do is because they follow your website visitors around the internet to the places where they're spending their time, you're actually just staying top of mind as they're kind of going throughout their normal day. And I think, on average, it takes about 7 times for someone to recognize your brand and make an impact. But in today's world, especially when everything's virtual, recent statistics are saying that it actually can take up to 50 times for someone to see your brand name. I'm so sorry. I'm a real person, and my husband is sprinting back and forth with a kite with my toddler outside my office window. And I'm like, I will cry laughing if I don't just say it out loud so that I can just.
I just like sat outside my window a little bit ago. So.
They're just sprinting, the two of them, and it's like very distracting for me. I'm so sorry. But yes, I'm human. And yes, those retargeting ads are so key for staying top of mind, okay? Because the more people see your school's name, the more that they see your branding, when they go to make a decision, if you are the one that was advertising and your competition was not, you are going to be the first website that they visit. So even if they're not clicking on that ad, it's a really good way to get your name out there without actually having to have a really high budget here. So I've actually become a really big fan of retargeting ads, and I feel like I've started to notice them a lot more clearly on websites. And you'll actually notice that a lot of them don't have calls to action. And that's what I've noticed. They're kind of just like a general branding kind of statement. So I think that, when you're running these paid advertising campaigns, particularly competitor campaigns, and I know we talked about this a little bit, Kristen, just in our own work at Final Site, where if someone is searching for one of your competitors, and doing retargeting ads for people who are searching for your competitors is a really good name to get your name out there if they didn't know about you already. So there's a lot of cool strategies that can go into retargeting that can actually be done on a really, really low budget. So I would definitely recommend to look into those, especially if you're already investing money into social media and paid advertising, because you can send everyone to the same page, send everyone to the same experience. We're simply just modifying the way that ad looks based on the platform. So just some optimization in the ad experience, and we can just send them to the same page on your website. So I don't think it takes a ton of extra work, but again, probably why having that agency or that consulting team help you out in these cases can be super helpful. And obviously having a consulting team can help you avoid some of the mistakes that we mentioned earlier in today's episode of the School Marketing Show. So Kristen, before we conclude today's episode, let's talk about how schools can avoid some of those really common mistakes, make the most of their ad dollars, and really capitalize on that traffic that's coming from paid search.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if there are just 3 things that you take away from this episode, I would challenge you to reevaluate the following. So first, think about the keyword terms that you're bidding on, which I know I touched on earlier when we were talking about the mistakes. So think about, back in the spring, maybe you started to run ads on keyword terms that were around distance learning, perhaps, if you really pulled together and put together a great program when everything first started to hit back in the spring. That's great, but if you're still running that advertising and you're planning on an in-person semester in the fall, it's maybe time to think about those keyword terms and adjust to match what you're actually offering in your advertising. So do that. And then again, with negative keywords, I would challenge you again to take a look at what keyword terms your users are actually searching for and clicking on your ads from, and then taking the time to filter out any negative keywords that you feel are not relevant for your ads and not relevant for your school. It will save you so much in terms of irrelevant clicks and wasted ad dollars. So evaluate your keyword terms and take out any negative keyword terms. That is step 1. Step 2 is taking a look at your ad copy and extensions. So what I like to think about in terms of your advertising on search is that you can really think of it kind of as your virtual billboard. So you have a lot of space to work with, but if you're not using up all of that space, that's just even more space that a competitor could show a larger ad on. Basically, the more space you use, the more space you'll take up on the search results page. So make sure you're being seen as much as possible. There are so many things that you can do with advertising that go beyond just your headline and description. So first and foremost, with your ad copy, you have on the Google network, you have 3 headlines to work with, each 30 characters long. So making sure that you're making them as long as possible and fitting that space using all 3 headlines. Now, Google will kind of pick and choose which headlines it uses, but making sure you have all of the options there will really increase your chances of being seen by someone who may be searching something differently from someone else. You also get 2 descriptions that are up to 90 characters each. So that's a lot of space to work with, especially seeing Google Ads used to be a lot shorter than that. So using up all that space will work in your favor. And don't forget about the extras. So I mentioned earlier site link extensions, giving the user that opportunity to maybe click through to some other relevant pages on your website if they don't feel compelled to click your headline. That's a great use of space to use. Call out extensions are great. Call extensions. So if you wanted to add just your school's phone number directly to your ad, there are so many things that you can explore within Google Ads. And I would recommend not doing everything if it doesn't make sense for you, but exploring what could make sense and being sure that you're using up all that space kind of on your virtual billboard. So that is number 2. Number 3, and lastly, and this is the one piece that I really hope you bring away today, is going back to your landing pages and making sure that they are custom for the goals of your ads. So I think this is one of the biggest mistakes we see when we're looking around at different advertising that schools are using, is that they have maybe a great ad that's compelling to click, but it leads to a general landing page that maybe doesn't even have a form. There's no conversion opportunity. Maybe the navigation is still visible, or worse off, it even just takes you to the home page, which is just not going to work as much in your favor as a landing page that is very clear for the ad that you're running. So if you're running an ad maybe for your virtual open house, taking users to an actual landing page for that specific virtual open house that you have coming up with a form directly on the page so that they can fill it out, register right then and there, that will work better than running an ad, again, say for your virtual open house and just taking it to your events page. What you don't want to do is ever assume that families know where to go when they get to your website, because I mean, like, we have very short attention spans. So I think it's about 7 seconds that we have before we decide to click away, and that time is getting shorter and shorter. So you want to be able to provide the value that you're promising in your ad immediately, or else you're going to lose those who actually land on your landing page. So don't expect that they know where to go or that they're even willing to click further. So your thought may be, we have this great events page. If they're clicking on an ad about our virtual open house, they'll find the virtual open house on our events page. Never assume that. Definitely make sure that families, if they get there, that they don't know where they're going. You want to be able to provide as much value as possible as soon as they get there. So make sure that you have custom landing pages. I think probably the biggest hurdle is creating that first one. But what's really great then is that you can just kind of copy that landing page, switch out the headline. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for every single landing page, but just making sure that you're, one, getting the keyword terms that your ad has and that you're bidding on in that landing page so that they all match. And 2, offering the same promise that you have in your ad on your landing page will just be the cherry on top of a great ad experience that will help you save money, because you'll get less irrelevant clicks if someone lands on your landing page and doesn't know what to do, and 2, more conversions, because you'll be providing a better opportunity for your families to fill out the form and convert with you. So those are my key takeaways. Definitely recommend taking a look at all that advertising as we head into the fall and as things are changing. And that is probably it for today.
Absolute fantastic tips, Kristen. And I know that last tip is something that we often preach to the, it's so important to think about that landing page experience. I think it's really easy to just take a paid ad and send them to a page on your website that already exists. I think that's really easy. But I think when we think about what actually would prompt someone to convert and actually do what the ad intended to do, the page itself just needs to be completely reinvented and reimagined for a lot of those the ads where you're really encouraging someone to take action to learn about your school, not just a general awareness campaign. So I know we just went through that same process for our paid advertising. And it really, I totally have to agree with you when you said, just getting that template down. Like, we met about a template, we created a wireframe, and then we pretty much just swapped out the content for each of the paid ads. And I think it was that initial workload that was tough, but once we had all the content elsewhere, it was just a lot of copying and pasting. So I think a little like boost of encouragement that like we've done it too with a small team and it can be done. So good luck in that regard. And then we will be here again 2 Mondays from now for episode 7 of the School Marketing Show Live. We actually received a request to talk about the inbound marketing funnel, which I think, Kristen, it's something that we just assume everyone kind of knows about by now, but I think it'll be fun to kind of just revisit it, put our virtual hats on, and just think about the inbound marketing methodology, the inbound marketing funnel with all of those virtual components in mind. So I think it'll kind of be fun to take a look at it for the first time in a few years. I think the last time we really wrote about or talked about inbound marketing from a high level has definitely been a couple of years. So I'm excited for that episode in 2 weeks.